Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today, wherever in the world that you're joining us from. So welcome to our February webinar. I'm delighted today to welcome back Gianluca Binelli. He joined us for a Facebook and Google Ads scaling webinar in June last year. And today he's going to be talking all about Google Ads bidding with an emphasis on how to avoid wasting money. So I'm going to let Gianluca introduce himself in a second, but just going to do a quick bit of housekeeping before we dive into this topic. I won't spend too long on it. Just two things to cover. The first is our most commonly asked question on every webinar. Are we recording? Yes, we are recording. So we'll send that to you by email. If for any reason you don't get it, you can also go on to adespresso.com/webinars, and we put the webinar there within 24 hours. This is a very interactive session as well, so we really want your questions. You'll probably see that chat box there in your GoToWebinar panel. So we put 8 questions there, and we'll be monitoring that as we go along, and we'll be getting to as many as possible at the end there. So that's enough about me talking, and what I'm going to do is welcome Gianluca. Hi, Gianluca.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. You guys should be able to see my screen in a second. Hold on.
Yeah, we can see it now. Yeah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. So today we're gonna talk about bidding and the nitty-gritty details behind it. We're gonna do a quick recap on bidding, then we're gonna jump into what models are available, what ingredients do we need in order to start with our bidding models, then finally the real meat of this webinar today, how do we actually go and pick the right bid. Then we're gonna play a little bit with segments, and I'm gonna show you the way for implementing your very own bidding model, and then we're gonna wrap things up. So before we jump into the details, let me tell you a little bit about me and my company. I'm part of a company called Boosterbooks. We define ourselves as the best scientific performance marketing agency. That is quite a mouthful, but before we used to be best according to our months. Now we recently won the award as best small PPC agency in Europe. So now it's official, months are always right. We are the best according at least to that award. We are focusing on digital performance, so we just do this very, very specific part of online marketing. We're a team of 32 people based in the middle of nowhere in Tuscany. This is some of us doing hiking one day. And the secret sauce is the fact that we really have a quantitative type of profile with developers, data scientists, mathematicians, media experts, and yeah, based out in the middle of nowhere in Tuscany, Italy. Which turns out it's a great location in case of zombie apocalypse or coronavirus. Is great to be in the middle of nowhere. So as I mentioned, our philosophy is paid media is a science. So we're gonna try to give that spin today when we're looking at bidding. And me, I've been working at Google for many years in different locations, always on the Google Ads team as a product specialist, as a which is pretty much the person that is behind whenever somebody from Google calls you to suggest whatever feature of the quarter, behind that person there's a very frustrated product specialist who is supposed to know every single details of every single product that is trying to tell, please don't tell increased bids, but instead we should try to do this feature, which never works. No, on a serious note, I really learned a lot at Google, but I'm really, really grateful of my last experience at Google for the last 3.5 years where I was there. I worked in the team managing the in-house advertising team. So buying media, promoting Google products on Facebook, Bing, Google, LinkedIn, etc. So as a product specialist, I developed many theories on how the online marketing for performance purposes should work. And then, as an advertiser, I had the opportunity to test wrong many of my theories, but something also worked out. So I started also working with one of the 2 Google VC companies called Capital G. And then in the last few years, I set up Boosterbooks. And as I mentioned, being in the middle of nowhere and having nothing better to do, we just do PPC day in, day out. So that allowed us to really make a dent in the industry and trying to develop as much as we could innovation. So today I really want to share some of the approach that we're using when it comes to bidding and really looking forward for your question for the Q&A. So let's do a very quick recap on the fundamentals of bidding. So how does bidding on Google search work? Three main things to know. This is a second level price auction, aka Dutch auction. So that is a very sophisticated way to say that we basically are paying only 1 cent more than the person behind us in the auction. So this sounds great from a commercial perspective, right? Every time you read that, you're like, oh my God, Google, you're so nice, thank you. I only need to pay 1 cent more than the person behind us. This is also a very smart way for incentivizing all the rational actor in the auction to bid the max of the value per click. So there's plenty of explanation. If you take any paper or book about game theory or auction theory for reference, you will see that in a second level price auction, all the actors will bid for the max value. You might remember, for those of you who studied a little bit more game theory, this is a similar situation to the Nash equilibrium in the strategy game. So this is how the bidding works. To know more, there's a fantastic video. If you search for Halvarian quality score on YouTube, there is a fantastic video that explains much more how quality score and bids are connected to the ad rank. And for context, Halvarian is the chief economist at Google and one of the most amazing contributor to the development of this specific aspect of game theory and economics theory in general. So fantastic video that really helps understanding the dynamics between quality score and bid. Now, as a historical note, I guess, if you guys remember, watching movies in the 80s or early 90s, you would probably remember thinking of Wall Street as a bunch of, primarily white old dudes yelling at each other, buy, sell, sell, buy. And, if you fast forward 5 years ago, probably the way we're all buying stocks in the market is definitely not yelling at each other, buy or sell, throwing pieces of paper like the gentleman in this picture here, but it's more through algorithms. So machines are taking decisions based on external factor, judging which stocks probably will go up or down, and then they will execute the order. So it's a much more silent to start, but also a much more effective way of buying stocks. Something similar, this type of change in paradigm, moving from a very human-centered type of interaction to a much more algorithmic and machine-driven type of interaction when it comes to the stock market. It's something that is also happening in the advertising industry. Maybe 6, 7, 10 years ago, you were going to wining and dining was the main skill required to build relationship, and most of the deals were closed over dinner, and you were able to negotiate X amount of media on Condé Nast or other publishers. Well, now the advertising world is moving much more closer to a world that is driven by machines, where we have the luck, I guess, to rely on data and use self-service platforms as Google, Facebook to reach to a global audience. And we can do that by buying directly, assigning to each specific keyword or placement or portion of the user attention the value that we think is a most accurate representation of what we can get from that specific user attention. So that is an evolution that happened, maybe not overnight, but was very fast. And at the core of this change in paradigm, we have really the bidding element, right? So we're going to zoom in on that part. Now, there are three actually macro approaches when it comes to bidding. So one approach is the full manual approach. So imagine manual transmission in your car. You will go and decide manually they're going to bid $1 on this keyword and $5 on that keyword. Then we also have the automatic approach. So you will decide based with a set of rules or an algorithm or a model in an automated fashion. You will decide that keywords that behave in a certain way will get $1. Keywords that behave in another way will get $5 bid. And then you also have the full autopilot approach. So in that case, you're going full Tesla, and you will let the machine, meaning the platform, so Google or Facebook, take over. Obviously, the word, and Google particularly, is going way more, and is going very fast towards the autopilot solution. So the word that we have today is way more autopilot than the word that we were living probably even a year ago, 2 years ago. And this is specifically since the introduction of the old smart bidding concept. There's an article on Think with Google that it's a good, that I'm linking there in the slide, that is a good wrap up of the Google ability to push in this direction. Long story short, autopilot really means Google telling us, don't worry about this, trust us. We're gonna drive in the right direction because we just know better than you, dear advertiser, because we are taking in consideration thousands of signals that you wouldn't even know. We know the location of the user searching in the auction. We know if they have a smartphone, what type of a smartphone they have. We know if the user is in a certain remarketing list, what is the time of the day, the operating system, the language, all sorts of information that us as advertisers, we don't necessarily have available in the interface or even through API for that matter when we are buying advertising. Now, that approach, trust us, it's an approach. I do think that it's very important to understand what is behind that. And then obviously, you know, each advertiser is free to pick the methodology that works better in terms of performance. But in any case, I think it's important to make an informed choice and know what is behind bidding. So that's why today we're going to really focus on understanding what is behind the manual transmission and the automatic transmission. And I'm going to show you an example to drive on automatic with a script. Obviously, keep in mind that the world is going more towards the autopilot solution, so more towards the different smart bidding solutions. So it's important still, it's like really learning how to drive. It's important to know how, you know, the transmission is working, then you can buy yourself a Tesla. But I wouldn't jump in a Tesla without having zero idea on how the fundamentals of bidding are working. So hopefully this webinar is just gonna do that, and it's gonna walk you through what is behind the right type of bid. So let's zoom in. What is a bidding model? Again, bidding model is such a mouthful. I feel as marketers, we really struggle to justify our existence sometimes. So we really come up with this complicated jargon. A bidding model sounds such a scary thing, right? But let's start a very simple example. Let's say we want to sell potatoes. So we will go to a market to buy potato first. This is one of those markets that are happening 4 or 5 in the mornings, where, you know, the people that are doing real jobs out there are actually waking up early to do that. We'll go to buy some potatoes, and the seller is gonna offer us $1 to buy 1,000 kilos of potatoes. So for you in the US or in the UK, I have no idea how many stones these are, but it's a lot of potatoes for $1. So probably this is a good deal, because in our mind, we're thinking that, yeah, we could sell 1,000 kilos of potatoes for more than $1 and make a profit, right? So yeah, we're very happy with this transaction. We decide to buy these potatoes, and we're gonna go on about selling our potatoes. Now, let's imagine that the following day, we're still going to the same market, and this time we're getting a different price from the same gentleman. We're getting $1,000 for one potato. So in this specific case, probably we won't buy that potato because we're thinking that we won't be able to sell that potato for more than $1,000, right? So that is an insane buying price, and we don't think that the selling price will be higher than that. So that's not a good deal. We're not gonna buy that potato. So what we just did was running a bidding model, because we just tried to assess in our mind if the estimated selling value of a potato would be higher of the buying value of that potato. So a bidding model, it's simply that. It's really trying to assess what is the value of what we're selling. So in our world, where we're not selling potatoes nor buying potatoes in most of the cases, we're buying clicks, right? We're buying user attention, and that is in a form of a click when it comes to Google Ads. So our game is very simple. If we simplify what we do to the bone, we're gonna try to assess what is the value of a click, similar to, if we think that we could resell a potato, we're gonna try to think what is, if we can resell a click, and if the value of the click is higher than the cost of that specific click, we're gonna bid more, so buy more. Otherwise, if the value of a click is gonna be lower than the cost of the same click, we're gonna buy less, meaning we're gonna bid less. So the real point is, how do we estimate the click value? So this whole presentation is really about one thing and one thing only: how we can understand what is the value of a click. Now, let's look at the Teslas, so the available models that Google is offering. I'm just gonna go there very, very quickly. There's a ton of material, particularly there's a fantastic article on AdEspresso, funnily enough. On the AdEspresso blog, you can Google Ads bidding strategy AdEspresso. There's a very, there's just a very good wrap-up of the potential options that you have there. Fundamentally, there are three families of strategies on Google Ads: smart bidding, what you have target CPA, target ROAS, maximize conversion value, and eCPC. Then you have strategies that are towards clicks, so maximize clicks or manual CPC bidding. And then finally, you also have strategies towards impression. So whenever you want to target a specific page location or a specific outranking share, these are strategies that are good specifically when you have more of a goal of maximizing your presence towards very specific keywords. So typically that happens when your boss or your manager are particularly sensitive about specific keywords. All right, so this is a very quick wrap up: three families: smart bidding, clicks, and impressions. Let's go back to trying to figure out what is going to be our own bidding model and how we estimate the value of a keyword. So we don't need to worry about bidding models if we have not solved some fundamental challenges that we might have before. So the real question is, how do we can audit if we have everything in place for for setting up a successful bidding strategy? So what ingredients do we need? First of all, we need a granular structure and ad groups with a proper match type. I think there's a quote from Brad Geddes, one of the most important people in PPC land. If you guys not familiar with Brad Geddes, really Google Brad Geddes, and we'll find fantastic content. So he's saying that something around the line that a lousy structure cannot be fixed by a fantastic bidding model, right? So the most important thing is making sure that the structure is granular enough. Obviously, you need to have relevant ads and landing pages, but also something not so often found, you need to have complete tracking. So meaning also including calls and micro conversion that are happening on the website. And finally, obviously, to have a proper attribution model, or at least something that you consider reliable enough. So if you have that, then you're good. You can really jump into the bidding model conversation. But there's just one more thing that you need to make sure that is ironed out: no HIPPOs. If you're not familiar with the expression HIPPOs, HIPPO stands for highest paid person opinion. As anticipated earlier, right? Sometimes you have a manager or a client or a colleague or an influencer, just someone that just want to be first for that keyword, right? I always have people pinging me and say, hey guys, you do online marketing, but if I'm searching for the keyword online marketing, you're not first. So are you any good at your job? Yes, we are, because we don't care about that keyword. We care about the user attention for the right users. So if, and this is a very practical example, like there are situations where for strategic decision, a certain company just want to be first on specific keywords, then you don't need a bidding model. You just need one of the off-the-shelf bidding strategies that we mentioned earlier. And we're gonna need also to make some assumptions. The bidding conversation is quite a complex one, so we need to simplify things a little bit in terms of assumption. The most important assumption is this one here, from our friend Hal Varian again. He and his team, they put together a study a few years back on, you can find the study in the link. The links will be published in the AdEspresso webinar page. The conversion rate, the assumption is that conversion rates don't vary that much with the ad position. So it doesn't matter if your ad is in first position, second position, or third position. We don't expect conversion rate to vary based on where your ad appear. Now, this is by far not everyone agrees, to put it mildly. There is a bunch of studies here that are proving exactly the opposite. This is a 2012 study. There's another 2011 study. There's another study that was published even more recently that are proving that conversion, that are, I guess, suggesting, because there's definitely not agreement, that are suggesting that conversion rates are changing with the keyword rank. But why there's so much disagreement in the industry? Because this is a very tautological element. This is very difficult to measure. Because if you think about it, the position of your ad is function of the quality score that you have. So the higher quality score, the higher your average position will be. Now, the problem is that your quality score will be also a function of the user experience. So the better user experience you offer, the better quality score. But the user experience is function of the conversion rate. So the better user experience you have, probably the higher conversion rate you will have. And so that means that the average position is function of the conversion rate. So it's very difficult, in other words, to say if you're first and therefore you have a better conversion rate, or you're first because you have a high conversion rate. So this is a very tricky situation to measure. So I think this is one of those areas where it's very difficult to measure, even if you wanted to run an experiment yourself, right? You can only see average values. Now, let alone the fact that we don't have access to average position data anymore, but still, even if you could only look at most granular level at best would be by hour in a specific day. So that would be just too scattered for you to draw a conclusion. So for you and I, and pretty much any advertiser globally. So here we need to assume that Hal is right and conversion rate don't vary that much with the ad position. All right, so assuming that conversion rate doesn't change with ad position, we're gonna go back to try to estimate the value of a click. Again, this is the core of a bidding model. In the analogy that we used before, we're trying to assess how much what is the value of this potato, all right? So how do we pick that? Now, the next couple of slides are gonna be a little bit boring formulas, but if you follow me for 5 minutes, I promise you for the rest of your life, you're never going to be scared when it comes to bidding. All right, so if we are starting from a target CPA, let's say we are in the lead generation business and we are selling insurances online, we know that every lead that we're getting, it's $100, okay? So our target CPA will be $100, and you know that CPA can be measured as cost divided by conversion. Obviously, cost can also be seen as number of clicks that we're getting multiplied by the cost per click for each one. And the conversion can be seen as the number of clicks that we're getting multiplied by the conversion rate. So in this view, we could also imagine the conversion rate as the likelihood that a certain click will become a conversion. So if we put everything together, CPA equals clicks divided by conversion, and everything is divided by conversion rate multiplied by clicks. So we can really simplify things and have CPA is equal CPC divided by conversion rate. Now, I think this is the most beautiful way of representing our work, because if you think about it, this is a very elegant way of saying that our job is to bring the lowest possible cost per click at the highest possible likelihood that this is available click, that this is a high intent user. So that is just a summary of what we do. And if we're solving that by CPC, we could see that our CPC, so the value of a specific click, it's equal to the CPA that we have, so that $100 target, multiplied by the likelihood that that click would become a sale, right? So a lead. So what is the value of a click? If we know that our CPA is $100 and our conversion rate is 1%, then obviously the value of one of our click would be $100 multiplied by 1%. So if we were to pay on average $1 per click, we would make a profit, because we will always pay less than $1, because this is a second level price auction. So we're always paying a little bit less than we're bidding, because we're only paying a cent more than our competition, right? So what is the value of a click in a CPA model? Is CPA multiplied by conversion rate. So that is a simple enough version. Let's complicate things a little bit and look at a model when we're in e-commerce and we're starting by ROAS. In an e-commerce model, our KPI is ROAS, so return on ad spend, a close friend of return on the investment. So we measure that as revenue divided by advertising cost. So revenue could be seen as the average order value, so our average ticket. Let's say we're an e-commerce and we're selling t-shirts for $100 on average, multiplied by clicks, multiplied again by conversion rate. Cost, we've seen it earlier, cost could be simply seen as clicks multiplied by cost per click. So if we put everything together, we can simplify things, and we can see that ROAS could be seen as average order value multiplied by clicks and conversion rate divided by clicks multiplied by CPC. Therefore, ROAS can be seen as average order value times conversion rate divided by CPC. So if we solve everything by CPC, and again, that means we're trying to assess the value per click. The value of a specific click is given by the average order value. So, we said we're selling t-shirts on average, our average basket is $100, multiplied by the conversion rate that we're getting on our e-commerce, and we divide that by the target ROAS. So, one important point on target ROAS. If we know that our target ROAS is, let's say it's 50%, our margin is 50%, then it means that our minimum acceptable target ROAS should be at least 2. So this is a very important formula for those of you that are, sometimes if you're working on the agency side or client side, sometimes, especially if you're talking with SMBs or businesses that are not that familiar with the dynamics of running online campaigns, maybe they don't know what ROAS is, right? But they for sure know what is their margin. So to figure out what is an acceptable ROAS, 1 divided by margin in the business, that will give you what is the minimum ROAS that you want to play with, right? That is the minimum ROAS. So that means it's let's say if your margin, again, it's 50%, then it means your minimum ROAS will be 2. So if you're getting a ROAS of 2, you're just breaking even. So you want to get more than 2 in actual ROAS. So let's throw that in. So we can at that point simplify the formula even more, and CPC can be simply seen as average order value times margin times conversion rate. So let's try to read the real meaning behind this formula. That means that our cost per click, the value that we're willing to pay for a specific click, would be $100 multiplied by 50%, multiplied by our classic 1% conversion rate. So that means the value of a click is equal to the likelihood, so that specific click will become a conversion. So that is the conversion rate, multiplied by the average value of a conversion, so the average order value, multiplied by the margin. So how much money we are keeping every time we're selling one of our t-shirts. So I'm sorry that I really dove in, I really went in a lot of details here, but these were the two most important slides of this presentation, right? Really getting what is the mechanics behind setting the right bid. That's it. These are the two formulas we need to remember. Now, the real problem now that we've seen the theory, how we can assess what is the value of a click. So in a CPA model, we just need the target CPA. In a ROAS model, we need the target ROAS, the average order value. In other words, what is the margin and the average order value. So these are all information that any business will have. So the difficult part is really, surprisingly enough, trying to figure out what is the likelihood that a click will become into selling a product. So in other words, we need to figure out what is the conversion rate. So the first part is easy. The second part is a little bit more difficult. Why? Because we need to define what is the right window for conversion rate. You guys probably have seen, if some of you are familiar with Facebook more than Google, this is a classic situation, this post effect in attribution. You run a campaign today, excuse me, you run a campaign today and you are, let's say you're getting 1,000 clicks today and you're only selling 10 products, but these 1,000 clicks that you're selling, that you're making today probably will convert in the future, right? So that is the conversion windows. So how long should we wait for, for the coming sale from the original clicks to come in? On Google Ads, you can simply segment by days, and you get something like that. In these specific campaigns, we got 56. We sold 56 products. 48 were sold on the same day of the click, but then the remaining difference between 56 and 48. So the remaining, how many are them? 12 products were sold in the following days. And you can plot things on a graph. You usually get something like that. On Y, you will plot the conversion rate, and on X, how many days. So that really means that the conversion rate tend to go up quite a bit the more you wait. You want to take in consideration here the complexity of the sales cycle, right? So if you're selling a very complicated product, that is something that you want to take in consideration. If you are, if you're selling maybe something that doesn't require such a long selling cycle, probably you want to pick a shorter time frame. There's even a more sophisticated method of that. There's a bunch of scripts here that will basically, you can connect Google Spreadsheet to Google Ads using, there's a script here from Frederick Valleys. You can use Supermetrics, you can use the Google Ads add-on. Then you will set up a daily extraction of the sales and, the conversion and the clicks that you're getting. There's a simple script here that will paste things in this manner. And basically what this graph is telling you, on the first day that we're running this operation, let's say we got 1,000 clicks and we sold, these are bottle of wine, and we sold 26 bottles of wine. The same 1,000 clicks on the following day actually sold us another bottle of wine, right? Now, fast forward to 52 days, 51 and 52, we actually, the same 1,000 clicks that we got in the beginning, the same user now bought in total 60 bottles of wines. When you see things flattening out, so going back to this graph, when this becomes logarithmic, that's when there's no more post-attribution effect. So post-attribution, and in generally speaking, the conversion windows of attribution are super important in order to define the right conversion rate. The other thing that you want to take in consideration is how many clicks do you think are relevant to in the last whatever days that we just discussed. How many clicks do you think are relevant that you got, let's say, in the last 60 days for calling that conversion rate to be valid. In other words, let's say if you got 10 clicks in the last 90 days and you sold one product, is your conversion rate really 10%? Probably you wouldn't trust those 10 clicks, right? Or if you had 1,000 clicks in the last 10 days and you sold 100 products, you probably will rely that 10% conversion rate. Actually, it's something you could rely on in order to bid for the future. So the real problem are situations where you don't have enough clicks. So typically you will have a graph that looks like that. So the clicks are very sparse in time. And in this case, it's quite difficult to define the right conversion rate. So you have a few solutions. The first solution is that you can extend the time range. That is a very rough solution and probably problematic for many businesses if there is a certain level of seasonality. A better solution could be clustering. So by semantic or campaign type, the level of intent or the word count. As a side note, I find the word count to be often a reliable metrics. So you will see that keywords on a specific word count often, they tend to get a very sticky conversion rate that tend to be similar around a certain number. So the name of the game here is really trying to cluster sparse data everywhere, sorry, around to group them so that you can better judge the conversion rate. All right, that's it on the core of the bidding. So we've learned what are the basic formula to define what is the right bid, and we've seen that the tricky part is really understanding the conversion rate, because sometimes we need to do this clustering and aggregation. Let's spin things a little and let's complicate them a bit more by introducing segments. So by segments here, I'm referring to the fact that on Google, so Google in the last few years really moved fast to make things more sophisticated than simple keywords. Now we can slice our audience by remarketing lists or even audiences if our users are in market for a specific product. Or we can slice our audience by demographics, so by gender, by parental status, by age, but also by the time of the day, the device, and the location where our users are. So these are all information that come very, very handy when it comes to bidding, because we can use them for bid adjustments. Now, there's a very important assumption, or I guess limitation, that we need to make before using bid adjustment. Let's say, sorry, let's say we have a remarketing list and we have a specific type of users that are working very well. We get a ton of conversion from them. We have a fantastic conversion rate from these specific users. Then we also have a specific age group. We have female 18 to 24, and we're killing it on this specific demographic. They are buying like crazy our product. We will probably in this case add a positive bid adjustment on that remarketing list and a positive bid adjustment on that specific demographic group, right? The problem is, this could be exactly the same users and we have no idea, no way to split them up. So basically we're bidding twice on exactly the same user. B, even if they're not the same users, when it comes to bid adjustment, there is a compounding effect. So if you're bidding more, let's say you're bidding 10% more on female and 10% more on the segment 18-24, when it comes to female 18-24, there will be a compounding effect between these two elements. So these are limitations of the bid adjustment that you should be aware of. All right, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch off my email alert. So sometimes you guys get an email popping up here. All right, let's see some examples on how we can define what is the right conversion rate. Sorry, the right bid adjustment. So a classic situation, I'm sure you guys will experience something like that. The different devices would give different conversion rates, right? So a classic situation in this specific example, let's say we have 2 peanuts conversion rate on average. Mobile conversion rate is worse than desktop conversion rate. Tablet is something in between. So in this specific case, mobile is 255, desktop is a little bit more than 5.5, and tablet in between. So mobile is exactly 47%. Mobile conversion rate is 47%. Desktop conversion rate. This is a classic situation across B2C businesses, but also B2B. So what we could do about that, we can set up as 100%. We will define our bid at keyword level, placement level, using the formula before, but then we will adjust with a negative bid adjustment on mobile. So on mobile, we will bid less by adjusting by minus 53%, which is 1 minus the difference, the delta in conversion rate, so that we are assigning a negative weight to the value of our users that is coming from mobile. So to summarize, we will go and define our bid at keyword level using the 2 formulas that we've seen earlier, but then we will apply bid adjustments at segment level using this type of approach. So for the bid adjustment, we're making the ratio between the 2 conversion rates, okay? Now, how we can implement all of that? If we want to implement this approach, there's no need to go, let me rephrase. It's not that there's no need. Your life is definitely too complicated to go and implement this very granular and sophisticated approach manually. You have to do that programmatically with a script or through API. And I'm going to show you a very simple script combining with some Google spreadsheet love will put you in a position where you can do exactly this type of approach. There are obviously 3 very simple steps: collecting data, computing the right bid, and uploading the bid. Let's see how we first collect data. The first step, we need to create a Google spreadsheet, and then we need to connect that with Google Ads. There are different options to do that. The first one, we can use softwares, would be like Supermetrics, Funnel.io. There are even more software in the market that are doing exactly that. Or we can use the Google Ads on, or we can use, there's a very beautiful script from Frederick Valles from Optimizer that is doing exactly that. The second point is the data collection. In this example, we are giving the details if you were to use Supermetrics. So if you're using Supermetrics and you're on e-commerce, you can simply copy and paste this data. If you are using Supermetrics and you're a lead gen, you can use these columns. But the main point is that you want to connect, you want to import in the Google spreadsheet the clicks, the conversion, and the cost per click that you got in the last 7, 30, 60, and 90 days. We're using different windows because if you don't have enough data, let's say you set up yourself a threshold of at least 100 clicks in order to judge that conversion rate to be relevant, right? The point that we've seen earlier. If you don't have 100 clicks in the last 7 days, you're gonna move in the next 30, in the 60, and so on and so forth. So you just simply need to compute the bid using the formula that we said earlier. So if you're measuring, if you're a lead generation, so let's say you're doing lead gen for an insurance, and you know that the average insurer lead prospect lead will be $100 value. You will multiply that $100 times the conversion rate that you have on that specific keywords. So let's say here, if we're running the AdEspresso campaign for the keyword pay-per-click, AdEspresso, let's say the value of a user signing up to AdEspresso, it's $100, and the conversion rate is 1%. In this specific case, we will need to bid $1, right? So definitely a lower bid than this $18 here. That's it. At this point, we just need to upload the bids. So this is an old but fantastic script from Russ Savage from freeadwordscripts.com. That is an old resource that I encourage you guys to check out. This is a very simple and stable spreadsheet that we're using even on sometimes very large accounts. It almost never times out. If you guys are familiar with Google Scripts, you know that there is a timeout if scripts are running more than 30 minutes. So you want to make sure that a script in terms of computational power is something simple enough. So that's definitely cutting the mustard in this sense. So you just need to add the spreadsheet that we mentioned earlier. So with this type of columns that you see here, and you will be able to automatically upload your data. So to wrap up, what you need in order to set up your own automated bid. You need obviously to define what is your target CPA and your target ROAS. Then you need to define what is the minimal acceptable threshold for your conversion rate. Let's say 100 clicks, 1,000 clicks, it really depends on your business. You would start collecting data in the spreadsheet that we've seen earlier, and then you would compute bids. For keywords that are directly above the threshold, you would just measure the value per click with the formula that we've seen. For keywords that are below the threshold, you will need to aggregate the measure of the value per click, right? So for instance, you will go back in time, not the first 7 days, but you want to look at the first 90 days. And then finally, you upload your bids with the scripts that we've seen. If you want to know more, in the presentation, you will see a few articles that are going a little bit deeper. And I want to spend the last couple of minutes to show a couple of scripts that are a more advanced level. There's a famous script from Brain Labs that allows you to bid based on the conversion rate variations by hour and by day. There's a really nice scripts from Google that allow you to bid by weather. If any of you got married, you know that the closer you get to the wedding date, the closer the weather prediction on the service that you have online tends to be more accurate, right? So I really suggest, if you ever use this script, to use the weather forecast on the same day where you're bidding, because that tends to be very, very accurate and would give you the most accurate weather forecast on the same day. So let's say you run that script at 4 in the morning on the most current weather forecast. And that is a bit that you can use for, I don't know, showing ads only if there's a certain type of weather, for instance. And the last one, if you are working with larger customers that are also doing TV or radio, you can do this TV coordination by using this script. These are scripts that is developed by Google itself. You can bid more on mobile, for instance, exactly in the moment where your ad is going on TV. So these are 3 more advanced scripts that just ton of fun to play with. So just wanted to share that. That's my email. If you have any question in implementing the scripts, after this webinar, feel free to shoot an email. I'll be very, very happy to help you out. And if there are questions, I'm happy to take them now. Over to you, Paul.
Awesome, thanks, Gianluca. Just going to share my screen here. So yeah, I think that's given everybody a lot of details that they need to really succeed with Google Ads. And I think with paid advertising being more expensive these days, you really need everything, all that knowledge to go and help you succeed there. So thank you for that presentation. So I've had a few people asking if there's going to be a recording because they want to go over it. Yes, there is. We're going to send out everything by email, including links to the scripts and everything that you need there. Sometimes emails don't arrive, so also check out adespresso.com/webinars. And we always upload that within 24 hours, usually within a couple of hours, but definitely within 24 hours there. So I'd like to give everybody a little gift for joining us today. So if you're interested in trying a free 14-day trial of AdEspresso and then get 30% off if you purchase, because we cover Google Ads there as well as Facebook and Instagram advertising, then just go to adespresso.com/AE-webinar, and that's exclusive link for everybody on the webinar today as a thank you for joining us. Also, if you're thinking, hey, this all makes sense, but I need some help with this. I can't do this all on my own. We've got a team of experts standing by ready to help there. We offer some managed services, so we can do campaign reviews very tactical, where we just look at one of your campaigns and do a 10-minute video run through for that. We can do one-to-one coaching sessions where we can discuss anything that you like. That's both on Facebook and Google. And we also do managed services where we can actually run your Facebook or Google advertising for you. So if you're interested in that, if you take out an AdEspresso trial or you're a customer, go to the services tab there and you'll find out about it. Otherwise, it's on our website, adespresso.com/tour. And there's this segment there on marketing services. And just a little heads up on our next webinar. So we like to alternate them. So this one was obviously on Google. Next month is going to be with Evan Zukowski. He's going to be covering Facebook, kind of how to write really good, high converting Facebook ads there. So we're going to change topic a bit there. If you're interested in that one, adespresso.com/webinars. That's where you find all our webinars, and you can register for that live one. That's going to be on the 26th next month. And finally, any questions? If you've got any, we're gonna get to as many as possible. So I'm just going to run through the ones that always come in. Carlos says thanks to you, Gianluca, and also Andrew says awesome. So thank you for all the kind of compliments there. So we're going to get to the first one. Thank you. So I got first one. This one came in before the webinar, so you probably kind of covered it, but just as a recap, Rajesh was asking the kind of best bidding strategies to get the most conversions for e-commerce products. What kind of things do you use for e-commerce? What kind of bidding?
Yeah, I'm very agnostic when it comes to bidding strategies. I don't think that the approach that we show today will be the best in every single case. And to be entirely fair, in many cases, at Boosterbooks, we developed a more complicated version of this bidding model, but this is pretty much it, right? The fundamental of the maths are there. To be entirely fair, we often get beaten by the Google ROAS, target ROAS bidding model. So, and this is true for e-commerce. In some other cases, and especially when it comes to B2B lead gen, obviously our bidding model is winning, but I'm very agnostic, right? It's all about testing which one is the best solution for you. If I had to place my bet on a horse, I would bet on the target ROAS horse, especially when it comes to Google Shopping. So for an e-commerce, I would definitely test on Google Shopping target ROAS. Yeah, that would be my my recommendation for an e-commerce. Yeah.
Awesome. And we've got another question there from Rajesh. Does Google Ads have some kind of exact tracking of purchases with actual purchase values, just like the Facebook pixel does, saying other than just the Google conversion tag? So just a little heads up on this. We have got a full webinar, which is available again in adespresso.com/webinars, where we've got a full webinar on this. But I just want any kind of thoughts. I mean, that you've got there, Gianluca. Certainly on the Facebook side, we find with the pixel, it's really good that you can see exactly how many dollars you put in and how many dollars you get out the other end. So just a kind of thoughts on how accurate the tracking is for Google and what's the best way of doing
absolutely.
that.
I think you have two ways to solve that problem. One is obviously using the Google conversion tracking pixel. If you are an e-commerce, so you have three solutions actually. Assuming, this question is from the same gentleman that asked the e-commerce related question, right?
Yeah.
All right, super. So assuming you're referring to an e-commerce, the best solution is probably using the e-commerce package for Google Analytics and import those data into Google Ads. The second solution is to use the conversion tracking pixel for Google. I would recommend the first solution over the second. The third thing that you want to add, and it's not either or, right? You can use solution 1 and 3. It's also using offline conversions if you want to upload offline driven conversion into Google. That in order to give you a more accurate picture of what is the actual conversion and therefore what is the actual conversion value that you got. That is extremely important before you set up your bidding. In other words, if you're not 100% positive that you have the best possible accurate picture on your conversion value, prioritize your time on that more than on a bidding model, because you want to make sure that you're nailing the conversion value first.
Great. And I've got a couple about two or three more questions, so we should have time just about to get to those. So Niraja's asking, just like a strategy here, what do you think about the strategy about using maximize clicks, bidding strategy when you first launch a campaign, and then changing to maximize conversions later on after about 2 or 3 weeks? Do you normally change bidding strategies through a campaign when you get more data, or what's your thoughts on that there?
Yeah, that's a very sensible question. We do change bidding strategy when we get more data. I think that your approach is smart. I probably have one concern, I guess. Usually maximize clicks gives you a lot of clicks, but of poor quality. So the system will tend to give you, lower position type of clicks that are cheaper, but are less interested people sometimes. Or different devices, right? So basically, you're getting user that other advertisers don't want. Classic skewing on mobile, right? So you get way more mobile than probably you were hoping for. So that is probably the potential concern that I have with that specific strategy. But as a general rule, it makes sense in the beginning to collect data and then to change gear into a different type of approach. Even if you want to use, the artist formerly known as conversion optimizer, so target CPA or target trust, obviously you need to have volume because the Google machine learning needs, exactly as the model that we're seeing today, the mechanics of the bidding are exactly the same, right? In one case, we are the one computing the bid. In the Google machine learning, it's Google computing the bid, but it's using exactly the same formula. And also Google will need an existing historical series in order to define what is the right bid for them. So yeah, it's a really smart point. Start with a broader type of bidding that will get you data, and then change gear to something where you feel more in control.
Okay, and it's the sort of question we get on the Facebook side all the time as well. Exactly the same, that the Facebook algorithm needs data so it can optimize. So how do you get enough data to be able to go optimize? So there's always different thoughts on it, but yeah, it's a very common question there. So thanks for addressing that from the Google side. So I think we've got a couple more coming as well. So Azim asked, do you recommend bids for the first page and first position bids? Like would those bids vary for each advertiser depending on their historical quality score?
The answer is no and yes. I don't recommend it. I actually hate it because every time I have to do that is because I have a hippo to deal with. So that's probably why I don't particularly like it. I don't think, what sometimes you're at a dinner party, you run out of, and you want to take out the cork from a bottle, you don't have the proper tools, and you're using a shoe or something else, right? I feel that bidding strategy is very similar to using a shoe to remove the cork, meaning it's a branding strategy that you're applying to Google search, which is primarily not a branding tool. So that's why I don't particularly am fond of that strategy. I do reckon though that in specific cases makes sense, but it should be confined to only those specific cases. And I think also in terms of setting the right budget, the right campaign, it should be defined in a separate campaigns than the rest of your operation. The second side of the question was, is the quality score going to impact? Yes, it is also going to impact. That is regardless of the bidding strategy that you're using. The quality score is a very big factor of the ad rank that you get, obviously, across all search. When it comes to displays, way less, but that's a different story.
Awesome. So I've got two last questions coming in, and then we'll wrap up then. So Leonardo's asking, how do you calculate bids for keywords without any previous conversions? So like you don't have a conversion rate there. Have you got any tips for when you're starting off and you just don't know what your figures are going to be?
Thank you, Leonardo. That's a really smart question. Yes, you have two options. A, you have collected some sort of data that you can use as a reference point. So in GA, if you have already some Google Ads operation, you can use that average of similar campaigns. If you don't have any Google Ads active at the moment, you want to look in GA, and sort of start there. Let's say classic situation, you're starting with a campaign, but you already have some organic traffic. So take the organic traffic, the direct, and decrease that conversion rate, because the conversion rate that you're getting on paid usually it's lower than the one that you got on or first initial super fun that you got on direct and organic traffic. The third approach you can use in the industry standard as a last resource. That will allow you to more or less know where you land in terms of conversion rate. The other approach that you can use, rather than compute a conversion rate based on assumption, would be the assumption that the gentleman in the first question asked, which was leveraging automated solution in the beginning to collect data and then to move to a manual solution at a later stage.
Great. So we've got a really interesting question here to wrap up today. It's from Maria. So Maria's asking, what if you realize that you're currently overbidding based on what we've discussed today? How would you go about cutting your bids without any negative consequences? She says, bidding yourself out of the auction and obliterating your impressions. So this is something we certainly get on the Facebook side, is that you got to be careful of bidding too low, but then you don't want to be bidding too high and then overpaying. So I don't know if you've come across this situation and how you kind of remedy if you're overbidding.
Yeah. By the way, you guys, a big difference between thank you, Maria. This is a really, really on the spot question. And it's a really good question for wrapping things up, because it allows me to touch on the biggest thing that we discussed today. It's a formula, right? Every time you speak with anyone at Google or reading Google's best practices, it's always increase your bid by 25% or 30%. You have these random numbers that are top down, and there's no reason why you should use top down number, right? You have data, look at them and use the conversion rate as a starting point. Now, to answer your question, I guess the Google approach would be gradually reduce the bid by max 20%, see the performance, and then another 15, 20%, see the performance, etc. Now, I want to give you a more practical approach. If that keyword is critical for volume in your boss, manager, client, I don't know, Maria, if you're client side or agency side, but the person that is having one-on-ones with you once in a while, let me put it like that. If that person is concerned also obviously about the volume of your operation, so if you're getting most of the conversion from that keyword, obviously you cannot afford to switch off that keyword or dramatically move the bid based to the new formula that we've seen today. But if this is not the case, shut that down. If let's say you're bidding $18 and based on the math that we're seeing today, you should have bid $7, start bidding $7 tomorrow morning, based on the assumption that that keyword is not giving you crucial volume and that you're capturing correctly the value of conversions, right? Because that scenario that you suggest is a scenario that I've seen so many times, but then when you dig deeper, actually you're not really tracking all the conversion, right? You don't have the calls, you don't have micro conversion, you have maybe a not super sophisticated attribution model. So then cutting that keyword would actually be shooting yourself in the foot. So the main message is use conversion rate, use the formula that we've seen today in order to make the math, but do that after you iron out the attribution model and the conversion tracking. And if you want to follow up, Maria, shoot me an email. I'm happy to take a look or to take it offline.
Excellent. And could you just give our audience your email address again? Because I'm sure there's going to be some people that want to get into that.
You're right. Yeah, my email is gianluca at boosterboxdigital.com, because boosterbox.com was too expensive.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your insights. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. So we're going to get that replay with all the links to you as soon as possible. So have a good day. And everyone's got any questions, feel free to reach out to Gianluca. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.